Howdy again everyone. I've been testing a lot of super telephoto lenses over the past 12 months or so, which is always as exciting as it is challenging. But this is easily the one with the most interesting, even record-breaking zoom range. The new Canon RF 200 to 800mm f6.3 to 9 IS USM. No L in there though, despite looking like it should have. There's no red ring here today. It's a full-frame lens, only for Canon's EOS R system mirrorless cameras, and it costs $1,900 or about £2,300 here in the UK. I don't have that kind of money, so I'd like to say thank you to Canon UK for loaning me this lens for a week for testing, although as usual it's a totally independent review. And that zoom range is really quite exciting. Any lens ending in 800mm is always going to capture people's imaginations, let alone one that starts at 200. This is immensely useful for wildlife and particularly bird photography, when you could zoom out, look around for a subject, then zoom right in and catch them. Just a pity the zoom ring has such a long throw. Takes a little while to actually zoom in, but still awesome. 800mm is a huge focal length for a full-frame lens, and so, even with a maximum aperture that darkens to f9 as you zoom in, this lens is still pretty big, and at 2 kilograms heavy. But if you want those kind of focal lengths, that really is more or less just the price you have to pay. The lens is made mostly of plastic to keep the weight down, and it feels reasonably tough. It's all based on a metal lens mount with a weather sealing gasket around the edge. Unsurprisingly, it comes with a strong metallic adjustable tripod mount. Then the lens has one of Canon's customizable control rings. This one turns smoothly. In front of that, a focus hold button, as well as switches for autofocus and for image stabilization. Talking about stabilization, here's some footage with it turned off and now turned on at 800mm. It's not performing miracles by any means, but it certainly is helping, and to be fair, I shot this footage handheld on a slightly windy day. Then comes the manual focus ring, which turns nice and smoothly. As you can see here, the focus motor responds very well to it being turned, and also, whether you're zoomed out or zoomed in, we see little focus breathing. All good news there. When it comes to autofocus, even when shooting at 800mm and f9, it's silent, accurate and very fast, and the mechanism had no trouble in my experience with tracking subjects. Then comes the large rubberized zoom ring, which can be set to move more smoothly or a bit more tightly. I repeat my previous mild criticism that its throw is a bit too long for me. I wish it could turn more quickly for faster zooms, but then again, in fairness, it's a big mechanism. And that's about it really. The front edge of the lens does not have a rubberized coating, which is a bit of a shame, as it would protect it somewhat from knocks and bumps. But you do get a large plastic lens hood here, and the lens does have a 95mm filter thread. Overall, great build quality here. Be aware that in real life, the lens is a bit bigger and heavier than it looks in this video footage. Anyway, image quality. We'll start with my full-frame camera, a Canon EOS R5 with its challenging 45MP sensor. In-camera corrections are all turned on. At 200mm and f6.3, image sharpness and contrast are both good but not perfect. Corner image quality just looks a little softer, but the picture is still holding up well. Stop down to f8 for a little more sharpness and contrast in those corners, and a little more punchiness back in the middle too. At f11 and to f16, diffraction kicks in noticeably, softening the whole image frame. Let's zoom in halfway to 500mm. At the new maximum aperture of f8, the image is very sharp in the middle right away, a little better than it was at 200mm. Corner image quality is looking better than before too, although they're still not perfectly sharp. Stop down further to f11 or darker, and the all-round image just gets softer again. Finally, let's zoom all the way into 800mm. In the middle of the image, sharpness and contrast are just okay now, nothing special really. Corner image quality is about the same. Again, stopping down to f11 or darker simply introduces softness due to diffraction. Overall, it's a competent performance here considering the lens's huge zoom range, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping for a bit more sharpness. Alright, let's really challenge the lens now by putting it onto my aps-c camera, a Canon EOS R7 with its very demanding 32.5 megapixel cropped sensor. I feel bad doing this in a way, it's going to stretch this lens to its limit, but a lot of wildlife photographers like to shoot on aps-c for the extra reach. At 200mm and f6.3, sharpness and contrast in the middle of the image are good but not great. The image corners are looking okay here too. At f8 those corners look about the same, but back in the middle, sharpness and contrast are now looking even better to me. However, as you'd expect, stop down to f11 or f16 and diffraction really kicks in, softening the image again. Alright, let's zoom in halfway to 500mm now. At the new maximum aperture of f8, the lens is looking fairly nice and sharp in the middle. Good. The corners are looking good here too, and that's an impressive performance on such a demanding sensor. Stop down to f11 though, and again, softness. Let's zoom into 800mm now. On an aps-c camera, that's the equivalent of 1280mm, so you're getting an absolutely crazy reach here. At the new maximum aperture of f9, image quality in the middle is a little soft now, with low contrast, but a reasonable level of detail is still making its way through. The good news is that the image corners aren't really much softer, and the image is still holding itself together, just about. And again, from f11 onwards, the lens just starts getting softer again. Overall, on an aps-c camera, diffraction is this lens's biggest enemy, as you might expect. The lens is never super sharp, especially when you're zoomed in, but neither does it get badly soft, and for such a telephoto optic on such a challenging camera, this is quite usable. Okay, let's turn off those in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting on a full-frame camera. At 200mm and f6.3, we see moderate pincushion distortion here, but very little vignetting. Zoom into 500mm and that distortion is reduced, but the vignetting is stronger. Stop down to f11 to see the corners brighten up. Zoom all the way into 800mm and distortion is virtually gone. Vignetting is a little high still though. Stop down to f11 or f16 to see those corners brighten up. Next, close-up image quality. If you want to shoot close-up with this lens, then you'll actually get best results by zooming out to 200mm, where at f6.3 we see great sharpness close-up, and stop down to f8 for just an edge of extra resolution to emerge. Let's see how the lens works against bright light. Good news here, whether zoomed out to 200mm or into 800mm, flaring is very low and contrast remains good. Finally, bokeh. Good news here too, even quite difficult backgrounds are rendered fairly smoothly by this lens, and there are no real problems here to report. Overall, while I was very impressed with the 200 to 800, and I know a lot of people are going to find it useful, I still had conflicting feelings about it. The lens is a little bigger and heavier than I was hoping it might be, and perhaps not quite as sharp, although its optical performance is undeniably reasonably good, and its dark aperture, while not disastrous, does make for a more difficult shooting experience. I also really wish that zoom ring turned a bit easier and faster for snap zooms into fleeting birds I'm shooting, although on the other hand, you can understand it would be difficult for Canon to make a zoom mechanism much faster than this on such a big lens. I don't know, I'm left with the feeling that I'm perhaps being a bit too fussy here. It is a good lens, very impressive, and it does come recommended. If you bear in mind that it's a little big and heavy, and that a tripod will greatly help when you're shooting with it, then in fairness, you'll probably get some fantastic shots with that useful zoom range. Thanks for watching everyone. Testing out long telephoto zoom lenses like these is a huge amount of work for me, so I'm especially thankful to all my lovely Patreon supporters who make it possible for this channel to keep going onwards and upwards, sponsorship free. Check it out in the description below. Supporters get all kinds of exclusive bonus content, early access, and a warm, happy feeling inside for having made such a difference. Ciao for now, everyone.